Thank you guys so much for joining me once again for another episode of Keeping It Real with America's Supermom. I am excited to have some returning guests on the show. We had to do ours a little different the first time because we had technical difficulties, but the show still went on. We did it by audio, but I'm excited to have them here today to actually come live in person as close as we can be in lieu of what's going on to have a conversation. So I have with me today Kristin and Mary Fran. And so before we get into some great catching up and great conversation, I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves. So we will start with you, Kristin.
Hey, well, it's so fun to be back. And last time we had technical difficulties. This time I had some hair difficulties. I'm not trying to do a whole big shout out to my Philly team, but maybe that's what I should say. I'm just here representing Philly.
Absolutely.
Now, thanks for having us back. This is going to be a fun conversation.
I'm excited.
So I'm Mary Fran Bontempo, and before we got on the air, I was having sweater issues and was I don't know what was happening. So apparently last time it was a blessing for everybody that we were just in audio, because I don't know what was going on then either. But we are the brilliantly resilient duo, and we came to our work together because we realized that we had different sucker punches and train wrecks, and we had a similar process for getting through them. And so we created Brilliantly Resilient to be the resource, as Kristin brilliantly puts it, be the resource we didn't have.
Love it. And before this, I had children issues, actually got a call from the nurse. So we definitely have had our share of things that are going on behind the scenes. But I'm excited to have you two here because in lieu of what's happening right now with this pandemic, and it's like continues to grow and extend further than what we had even thought from the very beginning. And the fact that you two really give a great example when it comes to resilience, I think it was very time important for us to have this conversation with the both of you about resiliency, because a lot of people have given it a deadline in terms of this pandemic, and they thought they would have been further along or things would have changed by now. And so one of the ways in order to continue to press on in spite of what's going on in our environment, economy, and the list can go on, we have to have an element of resiliency. So I kind of want to begin right in the important matter of what are some ways that we can really share with the audience about resiliency? What are the non-negotiables that we need to keep top of mind?
Well, you know what? You just hit on a very interesting point about everyone was expecting there was a deadline and it was going to be done and we are going to move on. And if I have learned anything over the past 2 years, it's you have to still keep looking at one of our biggest things in the Brilliantly Resilient process is control the controllables. Like, what are you really in control over? And people, I believe, can look at it this way. We've had no control over when the world is going to reopen, when it's going to go back to, quote, normal the way it used to be. It's a perfect time to practice controlling what you can control because it's changing every day. It can send you into the spiral of broken, which it did to me for quite some time, or it can be your chance to really take a look at things and say, no matter what is happening in the world, I'm going to keep moving forward using my brilliance, uncovering the things that I want to do in this world, and still making my impact regardless of what's happening. Now, I say that with my big smile and go ahead, audience, take notes and put that in play tomorrow because Lord knows I did it. Not. I keep bouncing back and I want to control. And I actually just said this past weekend when I was out to dinner with a friend and I said, you know what? I'm over it. I'm over. Nothing is in anyone's control anymore. So I'm going to ride the waves. I'm going to show up and do my best every day. But I am just going to ride the wave and not, I know Mary Fran's going to go into this one. I am not going to be married to the outcomes that I had planned. I'll let Mary Fran go right into that one.
Yeah. And that, I mean, as we've all learned over these last 2 years plus, we don't have control over the outcome. You know,
Mhm.
the best laid plans, you can, yes, institute your plan, try, make efforts towards your goal, but recognize that it's going to evolve with or without you, and in sometimes in ways that you had not anticipated, which can be for better or for worse. And you have to be able to let go enough of the outcome to
Mhm.
evolve with what has changed,
Mm.
because
Yeah.
we all know that is the only constant. So I think, I think Kristin hit on big things for us. Control the controllables. If
Mhm.
something is not in your control, give it up. Not give up, give
Mm.
it up. Turn it over to your higher power and go, look, I've done everything I can do here. This is on you
Mhm.
now. And then as the situation evolves, be prepared to let it. Don't keep running into a brick wall when stuff doesn't go your way, because I don't know about you, but not a lot's gone my way the last 2
Exactly.
years.
Look, yesterday, okay, just right before this broadcast, right? I mean, I think we really kind of forget about that. And, right now, there's a lot of people that do have influence. They have great stories. They have great testimonies of overcoming. And, you guys do a great job of really educating, but also informing and, just making it fun when it comes to sharing the darker times of your life, the broken parts that a lot of people don't really know. They look at your show and they look at your ability to banter and have humor and all these different things. But, for someone that's coming behind you, what advice would you give them in how to share your message? Because, the things that we talk about, I know that when I was on you guys' show, we talked about the darkness of depression and trying to get out of that. So, how do you say that in a way or give that message in a way that really helps people get motivated and inspired?
I think the first piece that, and this is one of the first pieces of Brilliantly Resilient, is when these circumstances take things away from you, and they do.
Mhm.
These sucker punches, they take parts of your identity, they make you question who you are, they make you question everything that you did and that you've done. But they also provide you an opportunity to get back to your values.
Mm,
What are your most basic non-negotiables?
mhm.
And I think that's the first building block, right, Kristin?
Yeah, and I would say, to your question about how do you get people to start moving forward and sharing and really talking about what's going on, the first piece is if you look at it as serving the people in your life, if you are being in service, you are letting them know not just the shiny stuff going on, but the stuff where you've got, and I'm not talking about just dump all over Facebook saying, I'm having the worst time. More so in a, how can you really serve the people that either are in your social media influence, in your own home, at your kitchen table? How can you serve them best? Talk about the struggles, but the messages that you're finding in there, the growth opportunities, or what you're learning about yourself, that is so in service to the people around you. And we were joking about before we came on, people didn't see the behind the scenes, getting the phone call from school, my hat, I'm putting my lip gloss on, a Mary Fran's sweater. It's the behind the scenes. Think about how interested we are in documentaries and the true Hollywood story that used to be out there. What's the behind the scenes stuff of your life that can really be helpful to folks,
Mhm.
especially in these days of thinking everyone's got the shiny life and I don't?
Mhm.
Nobody has the perfectly shiny life.
Nobody got that. There's nobody has
Mhm.
the shiny light. And you
Yeah.
know what? I
Mhm.
think I think that really, it levels the playing field when you, again, as Kristin said, you don't dump all over the place, but you admit that your life isn't perfect. And you know what else we have found? It allows you to create community. And
Mhm.
that can be huge
Mhm.
in lifting you up. It allows people to go, oh my gosh, I had a similar experience, or, that happened to me. And in doing that and sharing your stories, you build community. And at times like this, that's what we need. We need our tribe.
I love that. And I think, you bring up some good points about the behind the scenes because, that happens with a lot of people, but it's really your perspective on how you choose to look at that. You know,
Mhm.
are you going to focus on that behind the scenes? All of us being parents, when you think about the terrible twos, or, what it was like to go through teething and potty training and all these different things, there are parts of that that may not be so great. But you don't just go right to that when you think about parenting, not unless you're really in it at the time and it's just like consuming you. But we really have a choice to decide what we're going to put our attention into. And
Yeah.
I love this conversation because, you have a whole movie that you make usually, if you're going to a box office, and it's only until after the movie is over and you're looking at the credits before you see the bloopers. The movie is not made full of the bloopers or the things that didn't work out. They created the whole movie and then they gave you a peek of that.
Yeah.
So I think it's back to also the perspective, that we decide to look through the lens of.
Oh, yeah.
That's so true, and I'm going to let Kristen jump into that. But I do want to make a point that you had said it's how we choose to look at it. And one of the things that we say to people all the time is when you are going through those sucker punches and train wrecks, you get to make the choice. Am I just visiting this place, or am I going to live there? Am I
Mhm.
am I am I going to recognize that this is a period of time, that this does not have to define the rest of my life? And you
Mhm.
respect it, you respect the experience, the circumstances, but you consciously choose not to live there. I'm just
Mhm.
visiting. I'm not going to pick up my, unpack my bags. And then Kristen has great stories about perception and perspective that, I'm going to let her share them because they're very relevant.
Mhm.
Well, you mentioned about looking at it through a certain lens, and if somebody like me can take, look, I have two blind sons that have been blind since birth, and when you hear your baby is blind, right, instantaneous, I'm sure that everybody's listening. Most probably have never met a blind person. My first son was the first blind person I had ever met. I mean, that I was devastated. I'm not going to lie. And I'm not exactly proud of how I started my journey. However, when I realized that my son Michael was looking at his life through a lens of big deal, I still am going to do the things I need to do. I just need some new tools that other people don't have. And I was looking at it as, but he's never going to pitch for the Phillies. Who looks at it like that? What is the matter with me? Right. When I stopped looking through my lens of controlling mom that has dreams for my kid and started looking through the lens of he has his own dreams and purpose and mine don't belong on him or in his backpack at all, things changed incredibly. I mean, that was 22 years ago, and that kid is now, he's actually home on college break, applying for jobs all around the country, living the life of his dreams with success that you can't even imagine because I took my stuff off of him and let him soar. But I
Mhm.
also went through this, I'm sure a lot of your listeners have been through or are, heaven forbid, going through the muck of divorce. When I was looking at that through the lens of how dare he? How dare he kill our dream of the 50th anniversary? How dare he break up this family and now there's two homes? When I stopped doing that and started looking at it through the lens of, woo, baby, it's nice and quiet in this house now, oh, I'm not walking on eggshells anymore. And ooh, I don't have the stress pushing me down. And I have an opportunity now to soar into my own purpose and be the mom of these kids I always wanted to be. Flipping that perception and looking at it through a lens of opportunity, gratitude, growth, all of those things instead of why me, not fair, what the heck, switching that lens, just that one little bit of switching that lens gives you that opportunity to stop looking at it as brokenness and
Mm.
stop unpacking your bags and trying to bring all your girlfriends into the pit with you that they don't want to be there and they're tired of hearing about
Mhm.
it. It gives you that opportunity to not live there and just visit
I
there.
love that. Now, so we have a, viewer who was talking about that journey also with being visually impaired.
Mm.
And she's been challenged with finding jobs or even resources and tools. So, can you kind of go into a little bit of what those tools and resources were for your sons dealing with their sight being lost?
You know what? The number one, this is what I teach in a new community, a nonprofit that I started. I will say this, and it's probably going to not be what you were thinking.
Mm-hmm.
The number one tool that has gotten my boys from starting out with a mom that was crying on the couch to the top in their peer groups in the country is they take 100% responsibility for their own lives. They don't do the why me, poor me. So when my Michael was just in the city of Baltimore at a convention of 4,000 people that were job hunting in his field, and he had no idea how to navigate a convention center he's never been to, he did not call me and say, come pick me up. He didn't call me and say, you need to come down here and help me. He said, I'm frustrated, but I need to figure this out because this is my dream on the line. And he found the resources. He found people to help him navigate. He did all kinds of things and had the greatest time, but he took 100% responsibility, as does my second blind son, Mitch. And they believe that it's possible. They believe their dreams are possible, so they go after them. I will also say that literacy has been a number one practical, tangible tool for them. They had to learn Braille and they had to learn how to use the white cane to gain their independence in this world. If they didn't get their heads and hands around the tools of blindness, they could have all the dreams in the world. They wouldn't be able to get up off that couch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. And I think, I think it's sometimes hard when we are looking through the lens of our disability, and the fact that you bring this up, they're talking about visual disability, but a lot of us have emotional disability, dealing with depression, or as you mentioned, the fairy tale of marriage being gone because of divorce and all these other things that, at the end of the day, they cripple us from taking action. They make us paralyzed. We just get stuck and feel like we can't move at all. And so at the end of the day, all of these different things could be a form of disability, So it's really finding the right things that we need to do for ourselves to pick ourselves back up. So when you talk about your journey in the beginning and how you got your stuff off of your boys so that they can soar, what did that look like? Because a lot of us are there in that space of putting our stuff on other people.
For me, it was when I let go of my dreams for them. I was paralyzed in the fact that how is this blind 3-year-old going to end up a baseball player, a valedictorian? He can't navigate this world without sight. I had to figure out the tools that he needed to do the things he wanted to do. Like I said, the cane and Braille, two things I did not want to know about. I didn't want to hear those words. When you're going through divorce, you don't want to hear singles groups, dating again, attorneys, finances, spreadsheets. These are all the words that you don't want to hear. Those things that cause you that big fear, you have to step into that. You have to step in and learn and get yourself educated. And here's the biggest thing I can tell you that has been the number one thing for me, and Mary Fran also will probably chime in on this, as we've talked to over 200 people in terms of being brilliantly resilient. Role models. Who is where you want to be, right? So regardless of what happens, you get a medical diagnosis, a disability, a divorce, someone in your home has an addiction issue. Who got through it in a way that they are where you want to be? Hook up with them. And this world, there's actually no excuse anymore. Now that we have all the Facebook, the Twitter, the LinkedIn, the Zoom, everything, you can find somebody you can connect with. And Mary Fran's biggest one, I know she's going to go into this one, is raise your hand, ask for help, and accept the help in full gratitude and see what you can learn.
Yeah, Kristin and I often say that we are doctors of nothing. We got degrees in nothing, people. Nothing. So when we both found ourselves, and this is an essential part of it, when we both found ourselves in places, my story is that my son did suffer from addiction issues for many, many years. He was a heroin addict, an alcoholic, like you name it. And it went on for years and years and years. There came a point, first of all, you have to not make friends with distraction and denial. If you've got a problem, you do not make friends with distraction and denial. I excused, talked away his behavior. Oh, he's just going through a stage. Oh, he's confused, blah, blah, blah. If you feel it in your gut and something is recurring, you have to face it. You have to figure out what the truth is, what is true. And if you find yourself in over your head, my son overdosed on Mother's Day of 2010, and it was on a painkiller because he could not get his hands on heroin that day. But when I got him to the hospital, the doctors told us if they couldn't reverse the effects of this pain medication that he took, he would need a liver transplant if he lived. So I spent Mother's Day night on this little 2-seater sofa just praying that he would live. Thanks be to God, the next day they told us they were able to reverse the effects of it. And that moment, after I got done giving thanks to God and my husband came to relieve me, I went home and got right on the computer and figured out where I could send this kid to rehab because I was in over my head. That was the point at which I had to say, somebody help me. I will do whatever you say, but I don't know what I'm doing. So you have to be willing to put your hand up. And I would say this too, and this is another one of my favorite lines that we've ever heard from someone who spoke to us, our friend Kate Erickson, who's the engine behind the podcast EO Fire. She said to us one time, take imperfect action. Your action step, whatever it is not going to be perfect. And if you sit and wait for that, you're going to be waiting forever. So you take imperfect action based on your values, on what's important, based on the fact that you have a goal of not living in this space of challenge and pain, and you act, you ask for help, and you see what comes next and what evolves so that you can then continue to move forward step by tiny step.
I love that. And I mean, and you bring up a good point about, distractions and denial. And,
I was the queen of that.
So,
where I could have had a tiara that said Queen of Distraction.
Well, and I'm thinking, a lot of moms especially kind of identify with that. And, my question is, where does that come from? The same thing with you, Kristin, with your son. You're thinking, well, how is he going to do this stuff? His life is just not going to be full because he can't see. There's no other option. It's like, it's this way or no way, so how do you get out of that? Because I think a lot of women suffer from that.
Well, I'm glad that you say that because I wanted to make sure that we add in here, and this is actually, research and stuff done by Jack Canfield of Chicken Soup for the Soul. In his success principles, he talks about one of the biggest principles is you feel the fear and you take that action anyway. Like, I want everybody to be very clear that fear is not, we didn't suddenly get over it and then, okay, now we'll step forward. I've also said that for me, transitions are triggers. So when my kids transitioned from middle school where we figured it all out, then they had to go into high school. It was a trigger for me. The fear started again, the unknowns. Are they equipped? And then when they went to college, and then just last week when I got the call from Michael, he's in Baltimore, it triggers me again. But now what I realize is that's okay. That's not going to go away. So I used to beat myself up and say, why am I still getting triggered? Why am I back here again? Because that's life. That's the journey. That's actually part of living brilliantly resilient. You still have the fears crop up. It's when you can feel it and still take imperfect action moving forward. That's how you move through it. I think everybody thinks that it stops, then you move. You're moving through it and you got to keep on going. And that's why we stress so much. And I welcome everybody to come into our community on Facebook. Having the tribe, that community that Mary Fran talked about, having them around you, even if it's one or two people, as you're feeling fear and taking action, you need somebody that's pushing you along. Sometimes we are dragging each other along, but you keep going forward. But I don't want to have anyone thinking that the fear goes away and then you take action.
Right.
It's right there with you in your pocket.
Yeah.
It dissipates on action. Once you start taking those action steps and building momentum, all of a sudden you go, whoa, I wasn't thinking about how scary this is anymore. And then you go, like me now, I'm like, can you imagine my kids, my boys, when I was doing my TED talk and I rehearsed it with them to make sure they were cool with everything I was talking about their journey. When I tell you they laughed, they wouldn't stop laughing over the fact that I had been so sad and devastated. They're like, what? My kids are
Yeah.
so supportive. I'm like,
Well,
I'm a mom. Us
it is
moms
so
like perfect things.
it is so true because we have a different story. We're looking at certain things that our kids are none the wiser of.
Mhm.
I know that whenever my husband and I have, our disagreements or, arguments or whatever, the kids are like, man, I didn't even think you guys ever had that situation happen because you never know what they're looking at.
Mhm.
They could be observing something totally different than what you're believing that they're watching you for. And so I really like that you brought that up because while we're dealing with our pain, our kids don't even see that. They're like, hey, you were still cooking and doing whatever. And that's what happened to me through all of my pregnancies. It's like, okay, we're just going to have another brother or sister, but life goes on. They still want to go to the park. They still want to do everything else, whether my stomach was getting big or not. So I love that you brought that up.
Well,
Well,
and you know what? It does not hurt to humanize yourself in the
Mhm.
eyes of those people who are closest to you. You know, we all have these roles that we feel like we have to just continue to play.
Mhm.
And yes, we're the moms, so we do the mom things. But especially as our children get older, and even when they're young, there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what, mommy's tired. Mommy needs a
Mhm.
break. Mommy's going to sit here on this couch and eat some M&Ms and watch Say Yes to the Dress for a while, and you all just occupy yourselves, because they need to know that humanity is the human condition. We all
Mhm.
experience that. And
Mhm.
this idea that we talk about, that we've been talking about with the looking through the lens, has really clicked with me today. I keep thinking about, how you go to the eye doctor and they say, is that clear, is that clear, is
Right.
that clear?
One or two.
Allow yourself to keep switching the lens until it's clear,
Yes. I
until
love that.
it's clear for you, and that you're seeing what's true and not what you are filling in blanks with negativity, because there's always that
Mhm.
opportunity. Look
Mhm.
at the facts and deal with that. And that goes back to the controllables, I think.
I
yeah.
love that because I think also, when it comes to our kids, we want to be the voice of reason for them, or, we want to be engaged in what they're experiencing. But if we have this persona that everything is perfect and right in the world, they're going to begin to wonder, well, something's wrong with me because I'm having these issues and mom just
Yes.
thinks everything is 100% perfect, and then they don't want to talk to you because they feel like
Mhm.
they don't measure up. But
Right.
if it's when we're honest about these things that we're dealing with, I know that my kids now, I talk to them about mental health. During the pandemic, I don't know how many mental health days we took. And it's like, I'm calling their teacher, emailing them or whatever. It's like, look, these kids, they can't sleep. We're taking a day off. We're going to do something as a family.
Mhm.
Reach out to me if you need to. And now my kids are like, Mom, you know what? I'm not really sick, but I just don't feel good. This is what's going on. But I think those conversations would have never happened if I was just like, you got to go to school. It is what it is, ignoring the feelings that are coming up.
Well, think about it this way. You said you're the voice of reason for your kids. We are also the vehicle for resilience for our kids.
Mm,
They are learning that from us. And it is a brilliant opportunity. Talk about looking at it through a different lens. What is
mhm,
going on in the world is a brilliant opportunity for us to teach our kids what resilience really is.
mm,
Yes, that didn't work out for you. Oh, you didn't get to go to that prom. Graduation was on Zoom. Yeah, that stinks, but let's find the silver linings. Let's create a silver lining. Let's
mm,
talk about what happens when our goals don't get met and all the hopes and dreams don't happen. But the funny thing is, in my home, these conversations have happened since my boys were little, because things
mhm,
rarely work out when you step out into a sighted world without sight. So my boys
mm.
have been saying for the past 2 years, the whole world is talking about how to be resilient. Hello. We are
Right.
resilient all the time. So I realize that Mary Fran and I have talked a lot about this as we're building youth programs and more so now family resilience programs, because it is if you look at this as the most fantastic opportunity to equip your kids before they leave your home with the skills of resilience and living brilliantly resilient, imagine what the impact is going to be on them once they're out, and fly the coop. So most people are saying this is the worst time in the world. Our poor kids and mental health crisis is an all-time high. And we're saying, oh, but the opportunity that you have to connect and
Mhm.
teach them. And like our friend Justin Batt, who's the Daddy Saturday guy, he always, in all of his work, he says, more is caught than taught. You can talk all you want, but
Mhm.
when you show them, yeah, my plans didn't work out either, or yeah, your dad left and we got to figure this out, but we're going to do it together.
Mhm.
Show them and talk with them. And then, my goodness, how prepared they are for the world.
I love that. And what were you gonna add to that, Mary Fran?
Well, it's funny because Kristin, when she was talking earlier, reminded me of something that she's said to me a number of times, that when we go back to these places, we don't get brilliantly resilient. You don't get that. Like, you don't become that and then you're that every day. You're not. You
Mhm.
go back and forth and you work the process. But here's the goal. The goal is that for both us and for our children, to when that next sucker punch comes, when that next thing, that next train derails, and you get those feelings of angst and depression and anxiety, to go, as Kristin has said many times, oh, wait, I've been here before.
Mhm.
What do I need to do to move forward? I've
Mhm.
felt this before. I've had experiences that have made me feel this way and frustrated me before. What did I do then? Who did I rely on? What skills do I have? Like, am I a good researcher? Am I a good communicator? Am I a good what? What skills do I have that I can put into place to get me out of this moment and on to the next moment? And also keep in mind that these are moments. This is
Mm.
not, whatever this is not the thing that is going to define every single moment of everything you do from now on. It's not. It's an
Love that.
experience. It's a moment. What do you do to deal with it? What's your controllable and your skill set?
Love
Mhm.
that. Well, I mean, this has been a great dynamic conversation, and I really could talk to y'all for hours, but
Ditto.
um and it's a lot of fun to have those connections because you can go on some broadcasts and you just feel like it's just scripted, like you got to say the right answer,
I
but
used to
that's
write scripts for Kristin, and she goes, "Okay, what are we doing now?" And she would throw this aside. So I don't write scripts anymore.
yeah,
Doesn't work.
because it's there's something to being natural and organic about it that we spend too much time starting over doing things that just really are not true to life. It just doesn't help people when that happens. It's like, oh, okay, you're giving me this recipe, but it's never going to work out that way.
Yeah.
So can you tell me the real story? But with it being Women's History Month, and what advice would you give to women who maybe want to start a business, or, they want to be able to have this life that you guys have when it comes to being resilient? What advice would you give them, about having that, what to do on a regular basis, whatever you want to share?
Well, I would say to look at it this way in terms of the big picture, because I was always very much the make the checklist and check the boxes. And I didn't want
Mhm.
things to pivot. I didn't want any of that. I wanted to follow. And I've since learned that this is the lens I look through now. I'm the star. You're the star of your own movie, right? You're the
Mhm.
star of the movie. With your children, you want to be the supporting actress, but in your own movie, right?
Mhm.
You're the star of the show. You're also the writer and the director. So
Mm.
when things start going awry and it's not working out and you find yourself on a set that this wasn't the dream you had, guess what? You cancel the movie and you write a new one. You get to look at it.
Mhm.
Okay, what is a new direction I want to go in? And here's another thought. Just think about this. And then Mary Fran always gives the really good like meat and potatoes of the stuff. I'm the story person, right? Think
Mhm.
about Julia Childs. I don't
Mhm.
know if you realize, the big chef, she never
Mhm.
even learned to cook until she was in her late 40s.
Wow.
and didn't get into making a show of it until her 50s. It is never too late to write a whole new story for yourself.
Love that.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Now that's resiliency right there. Yeah.
you know what? It absolutely is. And I mean, I'm gonna just reference a couple of things that we talked about before. You build on your values. You stay with that. You stay with your values. You control the controllables and make sure with your perception that you're seeing the truth. See and act upon the truth. Don't live in places of challenge. You're just going to visit them. And then figure out, this is something we didn't really talk about, but figure out what's in your bucket of brilliance, as we call it. Everybody has something. And it doesn't have to be, in order to tap into your bucket of brilliance, you don't have to go, be building schools in foreign countries or whatever. Like we spoke to somebody yesterday, and she said her aunt's brilliance was baking great cakes. What is that thing that you do really, really well, that you love to do, that's your sweet spot? And how can you put that out into the world? Very often it's being of service to other people. If you don't know how to activate your brilliance, start there. Because when your heart leads, all of your skills follow.
I love that. I mean, that is great, great, great wisdom. And so what's the best way for everyone to get a hold of you guys and watch your show? When does it come on? All that.
Well, remember, we are doctors of nothing. We have been through so many things, and we are creating so many programs. And the Brilliantly Resilient World Tour is back on schedule now that it was delayed for 2 years. So every single thing we do is called Brilliantly Resilient. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, even our book, which is made to be able to read. It was like a top seller in the under 2 hour read, people. Doctors of nothing. We do not, we think ish. We work ish that thing. Yeah. So Brilliantly Resilient, we're on Amazon. And then our podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, I say I would highly recommend you go subscribe to the Brilliantly Resilient podcast, because that's where you are going to find out, not just from us, from, like I said, we have over 100 episodes. We've talked to so many people. Their brilliance is incredible.
Love
and
that.
they can find your episode there too.
Yeah.
All the episodes are there. We spoke to our friend Lachelle early on in our game, and we got to meet each other. We were fast friends from the beginning. But it's all Brilliantly Resilient. Kristin's right. We don't have the brain neurons to make it harder.
And you know what? As a matter of fact, if you go to, here's how easy we make it, because we need simple stuff. If you go to brilliantlyresilient.net, don't do a thing. Blink 3 times. And a magic window pops up where you can just put in your email. That's all you do. We don't want your name, phone number, firstborn, city. We can't handle all that information. You just put in your email, and once a week, every week, you will get a less than 1 minute read that we call the Brilliance Bit. That our show guests that week, the thing that's like drop the mic, that will change your day and change your week so you can keep living brilliantly resilient.
Love that. Well, this has been so much fun, guys. And I'm excited about you guys' tour. So are you coming to Georgia?
Oh, we would love to come to Georgia. We're set up to go to, wait, where are we going first?
We're going Phoenix,
Denver, South Carolina. So we're headed down.
We're going to add Georgia.
Okay. Well, yeah, I have to, South Carolina's not that far.
Let's
and that's an excuse to get out. Yeah.
We'll
make it happen.
Awesome. Well, this has been great, guys. And I'm so excited that we got a chance to connect. And I'm so excited with all the great things that you guys are doing. You definitely are a lot of fun. And, you definitely show that it is something to be able to work past the brokenness. And it's all about your perspective and really focusing on what you can and can't control in a way that continues to help you to thrive. I love that analogy about being a star of your own movie, and you can write whatever you want. And a lot of times we forget that because we're comparing ourselves to other people or being distracted or in denial, such as what Mary Fran said. So many nuggets. I mean, really, we can write a book from this episode with all the great tips that you've given. So thank you guys so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, thanks for having us back.
Us too. Thank you so much, Lachelle.
You are so welcome. And we want to thank you guys for viewing this. And if you really felt something spoke to you, feel free to share it. And if you have any comments or questions, put them in the comments and we'll be sure to get those answered for you as well. And we thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you on the next episode. Bye for now.